from personnel that will be giving us an update on the World Cup 2026. So we'll allow 10, 15 minutes to go over that, and then we will open it up for questions and discussion. So Lindsay Douglas, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today. I know we have some slides that I'll be walking through, and I will try to keep this to that 10 to 15 minute time frame that you mentioned. But I am so excited to be here today. The largest sporting event in the world is going to start in 489 days. Kansas City is lucky enough to be one of the host cities for this tournament. Again, we're thrilled about the opportunity to really put the whole region on the global stage for this event. There are about 3.5 billion fans of soccer in the world. About half of the world's population will tune in for World Cup matches. That is a huge opportunity for us to really put the Kansas City region in people's minds, show them what we have to offer here, and really showcase our culture and why international visitors might be interested in expanding businesses here, coming to visit, touring our region as well. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but this isn't a Super Bowl. This isn't a week-long thing. The tournament stretches a little over a month, with the final being the 19th of July. The first match is the 11th of June. Kansas City there, we have 6 matches. So in the bottom of the green section here is where our dates fall in the course of the tournament. We have the 6th largest number of days that we will be active in Kansas City. 26 days of active matches taking place from the beginning of the tournament through the coveted quarterfinals. So we are so excited. The teams that, there will be 48 teams in this World Cup. It's the largest number of teams they've ever had. And it's the largest number of matches, 108 matches for this tournament. So again, it was already the largest sporting event in the world, and this is going to be the largest version of that event. And the quarterfinal typically has teams that really make it to the end of the tournament. They have large fan bases that follow them through the tournament. So we really think this is a huge opportunity for us to have those fan bases here. KC 2026 was the organizing committee that was formed to host. We have the agreement with FIFA to have the 6 matches, and we want to do that in a way that really highlights our region. When we talk about delivering the Kansas City magic, we want everyone that comes to our region, when they land at the airport, when they drive in, they know that they're in the Kansas City region. They know what's special here. We want every player, every member of the media to know where they are while they're here, not just at a World Cup host city. We want them to know where they are and feel our best-in-class experience. We really want to raise the region on the world stage. We want to demonstrate what we have to offer as a community, both in our workforce, in our culture, in our welcoming Midwest nice personality. We want everybody to feel that and see that, whether they're tuning in for a match and looking at our facilities, or if they're experiencing it in person, either as a ticket holder, or the vast majority of folks that are coming to visit won't have a ticket. So we want to make sure that experience, they feel that they are experiencing the World Cup, whether they're actually at a match or just attending fan festival or a watch party in the region. And then we really want this to be a lasting legacy for the region. How can we, through delivering the requirements for the World Cup, really provide new opportunities to the region? Is that a trade mission in our backyard by welcoming CEOs from around the world, hosting them with our economic development organizations, giving them an opportunity to understand our workforce, different industries that are here, whether that be agriculture, animal health, aviation? How are we putting that on display for world CEOs as they're coming? as well as things from transportation. How is someone who's experiencing transit maybe for the first time within our region, what is that experience like? Will they choose to want to use transit in the future rather than driving and parking at Arrowhead? This will be a whole new experience at Arrowhead, and really showing the community that there can be benefits to different ways of moving around the region. So Kansas City, where we are on the map, I love this map. It really shows, we really stand out when you look at this. We are right in the middle. So one of the key opportunities that we have right now is we have 3 base camp locations in the region. The Kansas City Current Training Facilities, Sporting Kansas City Training Facilities, and Rock Chalk Park in Lawrence. All 3 of those facilities are 3 of 50 that are currently in the FIFA pamphlet for teams to consider as base camp locations. And that is the team, their coaches, that's their home away from home during the more than month-long tournament. Teams start kind of coming to these 3 countries several weeks before the tournament actually starts, so they can acclimate to the weather, the time zone, those kinds of things, and get training in together as a team. So we really love where we are compared to the other host cities. The tournament moves west to east through that month, and Kansas City being in the middle, if you don't know where you're playing or how far you're going to make it in the tournament, being centrally located and a short flight to get to all of these playing facilities makes a lot of sense. And we're hearing that from FIFA, we're hearing that from the teams that are coming to visit. So we know that our base camp locations, both from the investment that has been made in those facilities and all of the forethought that went into that, to our location, we are hearing from FIFA and those teams that we are really well positioned to be able to attract 1 team for sure, 2 would be great, and 3 would be extraordinary to utilize all 3 facilities. But right now there are 50 base camp locations. We are 3 of those, and there's 48 teams. So FIFA will continue to add facilities as we get closer to the tournament, but the fact that our facilities have been in that pamphlet, lots of teams have been able to come and visit and tour, we think we're in a really good position. There's immense economic opportunity here. We're anticipating 650,000 visitors. It's a huge number. Nobody fell out of their chairs. We're in good shape. The current population of Kansas City, Missouri is 509,000. So unlike maybe LA, New York, we are going to feel the visitors in the region. And that's a very broad region. When we submitted the bid to host the World Cup, we had to identify 55,000 hotel rooms within a 2.5-hour drive. So that's, to capture that many hotel rooms, we are clear into Salina. So people are going to stay in Salina and travel into the Kansas City region to watch matches, participate in Fan Festival, and just be part of the World Cup. Again, I kind of mentioned before, but there will be ticketed fans, but there's going to be a lot more non-ticketed fans that are just wanting to be with their team, be part of the action. And again, we think that central location for Kansas City is going to bode well for international visitors. And this is a pretty staggering statistic as well. We're modeling $653 million in direct economic impact. And I emphasize direct. I know that you all probably see lots of different studies related to economic development, what that could mean. We've really honed in on direct spend of visitors based on the number of matches, the number of people, that the capacity of the stadium, and this is all direct spend. There's going to be lots of secondary and tertiary impacts as you think about the number of businesses that are going to be involved in hospitality, in hosting folks, jobs related to that, and other secondary economic impacts. And this is a kind of fresh off the presses. FIFA has given us a new profile for the United States visitor. About 54% of the visitors coming to participate will be international, and only about 41% of those are going to speak English. So we know we've got to be ready as a region to host folks that are likely speaking Portuguese or Spanish. A lot of the other European countries that will travel to the matches have English required. Japan requires English, but some of the Spanish-speaking countries do not, so we're preparing for that. The average stay is about 10 days. So when we think about how long we're going to have folks here, they're going to attend matches, they're going to attend Fan Fest, but they're going to want to do a lot of other things while they're here. And so making sure that we are prepared. We've been coordinating with a lot of tourist organizations, the State Department of Commerce, obviously, to make sure that we know people are coming here for Americana. Do they want to do the Gunsmoke tour? Do they want to be able to go visit Dodge City? Are they wanting to do lots? They're going to want to do lots of other things in the region, and we want to make sure they know about those things. One thing that we're still trying to dig in on and understand a few more details about is the 68% of these visitors having a credit or debit card. If anybody's been to a game recently, a lot of it is cashless. So how are we going to help folks that don't have credit or debit cards that are typically working off of cash? How are we going to, is there a cash to card kind of machine that could be set up so that those folks, those 32% of folks can transition to a card if needed. And this is that map that I mentioned. So when we looked at that 2.5-hour radius from Arrowhead, that drive, we're going to be seeing impacts in hotels and other accommodations well into the state. And just the tax generated on those stays alone is going to be about 10.7 million based on our modeling. Transportation has been a key issue. How are you going to move those 650,000 people around? We do have some public transit, but we're not like New York, New Jersey that has a light rail stop at their stadium. So we've been working with our consultants and the regional transportation partners to really understand how we can build a transportation overlay using buses to make sure that we have capacity to move people in and out of these different activations, both from the airport to downtown, to hotel clusters in and around the region, in and out from both Fan Fest and the stadium. So we're very confident. We will just be completing our first lease agreements for 200 buses. To put that into perspective, current KC-ATA operations are about 150 buses. So we're more than doubling that public transit capacity to be able to accommodate for the KC-26 transportation overlay. And I mentioned the base camps and kind of us being centrally located. This is an area where I think we've really set ourselves apart and have demonstrated leadership in having so many base camp locations in and around us as a host city. So all of the white communities are host cities that do not have a base camp facility. So when you look at the West Coast, it's looking pretty barren on that side of the country, more on the East Coast, but the red cities are host cities that have base camps. And then the green are base camp locations that are not hosting any matches. So if you're a team that's going to make the duration of the tournament, our 26-day activation time for the tournament, as well as our central location, are going to be very attractive to teams and visitors. And then I just have the plugs here. So our KC26 website, we have a quarterly newsletter you can sign up for, where we're going to be posting things, especially over the next year, being down to 489 days. We're going to have a year out event, really celebrating and getting folks excited about the tournament, as well as we get closer and closer, there will be a host city poster. We'll have final draw events later in the year, but that's really when we find out what teams will be playing in Kansas City in the group stage. And so final draws in December. There will be lots of hubbub around that too, as we know what teams will be coming to the region. And then we also have, we're on social media, and the sports environment in Kansas City is really, really exciting right now, and we're happy to be a part of that and celebrate with our teams in their continued success. And that is the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Lindy. I know that this is somewhat of a turmoil world we live in today, and so I wondered if you could make just a few comments about the anticipation of security.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. I think it's, yeah, unfortunately, we've had some recent activity that is helping to inform our planning. So as we look at the events that occurred in New Orleans, unfortunately, we're factoring those things in. Events that have happened in Kansas City, we have a lot of local experience kind of informing that and understanding where our risk locations are within the region. When we approach the safety and security planning, FIFA has 18 areas of focus that we have built committees around. And those are state level, federal level. We just had our federal coordinator appointed. For those that know this world, and you probably know it better than I do, but at the federal level, the Department of Homeland Security will do a SEER rating assessment on events. Right now, we are currently rated a SEER 2 event. That's going to open up some federal resources for us. We have a coordinator who's actually based in the Secret Service. We hired a director of safety and security also from the Secret Service. So they're bringing a lot of international experience as we think about the dignitaries that could be coming here to watch a match. FIFA will be a partner in how we're securing those folks. But also all of the federal agencies that are in Kansas City, all of that coordination, both from an intel perspective as well as resource, they are at the table and working with us. I would also say the states and the local law enforcement have been amazing partners to help us identify what resources are going to be needed. If we're escorting teams and people, how are we getting them in and out of these facilities? What does ingress and egress look like? We're kind of planning for all kinds of different scenarios as well as cyber threats. So we're factoring in a number of those things. I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that builds some confidence. We've got a lot of folks at the table, a lot of experience and expertise.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have lots of questions, of course. My community sent me 3 pages of questions, in fact, last night. So I'll try to pare that down. But in relation to the question that was just asked, I know that FIFA or KC26, you're primarily focused on the safety and security around your event sites. My question deals with more of the greater regional need for safety and security. So like, for example, FIFA 26, they're not providing emergency radio communications coordination outside of the event spaces in Kansas City. So what are those local communities hosting base camps or training sites? What do they need to do to ensure that there's interoperability?
Well, that is one particular issue that we are very focused on. There will be a joint operations center that will be active throughout the tournament. And all of the local law enforcement as well as federal, state have space at that joint operations center. It will cover both safety and security, transportation, as well as communications. So as far as interoperability on emergency response, I think one thing that we saw in New Orleans, that was an incident that happened outside of the actual event site. And it had a huge impact on the ability to deliver that game and deliver it on time. So it was delayed. They couldn't spread their resources and cover both the community side of that as well as the event. And so that is all being built into our planning effort. And so I don't have that. When you said we are not providing, I think there is certainly a concentrated effort in making sure that there is going to be interoperable communications, because if something happens in Lee Summit and it's going to impact their ability to provide mutual aid, or in Kansas City, Kansas, and their ability to provide mutual aid, we know we've got to secure everything. And so working together, in fact, we just had a meeting this week with Governor Kelly's administration, and what planning is being done in coordination at the state level. And so those conversations are ramping up as well in what's going to happen at the state operations center and emergency response center. How long are they going to be active? What kind of role are they going to play in the Kansas City Region Joint Operations Center? So I would say there's a lot more to come and a lot more coordination that is needed, obviously, but our intent is that there will be interoperable communications so that everybody is in the know on what's going on. Obviously, we have a role to make sure that our events are safe, as you mentioned, but everything happening in the region is going to impact the safety of those events, and what's happening at our events is going to impact the safety of the region. So there has to be communication across.
Chair, if I could just follow up on that.
Fire away.
So, I appreciate that, Lindsay. And I think, part of the concern too is that we have, with so much of the resources during that period of time being focused on the World Cup events, how much is that going to take away, or what coordination is there to ensure that all of those events that happen on a yearly basis still have those critical resources to be able to make sure that not just people here for the World Cup, but people who live here, people who visit here for other events that are happening in our area? How is that coordination happening? And I will just share with you that the concern that I have is that our resources are just going to be so taxed. And so I know, and I want to be supportive of, I am supportive of the financial contribution that we are giving to host this event, but there are so many needs outside of that, and so that is creating a financial burden and pressure on a lot of the communities that are directly impacted.
Thank you. I would say that one of the things that we're working on is to create a tool with the Mid-America Regional Council. It's a community calendar, so that if there are other community events happening at the same time, those are being populated into that calendar so we know where the needs are going to be for public safety. A big portion, the largest portion of our budget is safety and security. It's more expensive than the transportation system. It's more expensive than anything else. And the big portion of that is personnel. So as we're thinking about the mutual aid and the public safety needs to secure these events, we are factoring in the cost of that. We've actually asked for costs from those local jurisdictions. Tell us what it would take to have an escort from a base camp. We are factoring that in and anticipating covering those costs for the events. I hope that in our kind of joint planning for this, and it's really being led by the experts in the region with the assistance and kind of oversight of our organization to make sure we're covering all of our bases, have all the right people at the table. But I hope that any concerns that people aren't offering up mutual aid if they need those resources in their community. If we have to go outside of the typical mutual aid region to get additional resources, and we've talked even about, what additional federal resources could be brought in. Are there communities in Nebraska that aren't going to have that influx of folks that maybe could be, assist us? So we're not thinking in our tunnel. We're really trying to think outside the box a little bit here. And then the other thing I would say is communities that have concerns. I know that part of our role is not just for the events, but also base camps. And so where there's security requirements for those base camps that are exterior, the facilities themselves have a contract with FIFA for anything inside the facility. But for any security that's required on the outside of that facility, that is something we are also factoring into our budget and would not be a burden to be borne by the community. So I hope, as there are conversations, if there are concerns, happy to sit down with the folks that sent you that list and kind of work through those questions and hopefully ease some of their concerns about what's included and what we're planning to cover. And then as far as like other community policing, their normal day-to-day, we want their normal day-to-day to continue to happen. And then it's really folks that are off duty or overtime opportunities or things like that. It'll be a lot, but yeah.
And so some of the dollars that have been allocated will help pay for that, because that is part of the question. just our limited resources in, you know, paying for overtime or paying for those additional.
Yep, exactly. So KC 2026 is planning to cover the cost of all of the law enforcement presence that is needed at our events. And we're not, our events and base camps. So, you know, if there's, I'm trying to think if there's a good example I can recall right off the top of my head. But again, happy to work with the community and really try and talk about and address concerns that they have.
Representative Roth.
Thanks for your presentation. It's really always exciting to see great things coming to the region. My question is in regard to the slide that you had up there with the 2.5 mile radius. And so,
2.5 hour?
yeah,
Radius?
2.5 hour radius, my bad. All right.
I say the same thing and
So,
no
anyway,
worries.
so with that in mind and the economic impact, to all these visitors that are coming, is there anything that you're developing that would provide for them a sheet of paper with destinations from small communities and what that particular maybe small community might offer? And
I am so thankful you asked that question. One of the things that we know we're going to have is an app. There will be an app, phone app. FIFA will have their portion of that. That's where if they have a match ticket, that'll live there. But there's a host committee portion of that where we're going to be able to have like a journey planner so that people know how to get around, opportunities for restaurants, tours, other things that are being offered outside of the region. We've already got on our website links to the Kansas Tourism website. We want visitors that are going to come here to already start planning some of those things. We're also coordinating with international tours to make sure that they know about different tourist opportunities that are in and around the region if they're planning planning trips for folks that are wanting to come to Kansas City. So we're looking at lots of different options. We're also talking a lot about for airport, having a welcome center, a few probably strategically located around the region for visitors to come and know what opportunities exist. So we'll be working with all of the stakeholders to kind of populate those welcome centers, make sure that they know about the resources that are in and around the region, and make sure we want to be really strategic. And I think this was another point I wanted to make on your previous question as well. We are currently planning for a 24-day fan festival. That's not going to cover every single day of the tournament. So we want to be really strategic about when Fan Festival is open, when Fan Festival is closed. The 4th of July falls during the tournament. There's going to be lots of celebrations and events in and around the region. We want people to get out of that core Kansas City area, go and experience the state of Kansas and the other communities and different tourist attractions.
Yes.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that answer. So how does, like the communities in the district that I represent, do they contact you? Are you reaching out to them, like the chambers of the communities, and so that they can provide you information about destinations, you know, in my district?
Yeah. So we've been working with all of the visitor and convention bureaus. We've had multiple meetings with them about this opportunity and who's coming. And I know there's lots of planning underway to try and attract folks and advertise those offerings. We are also working with the Kansas Department of Commerce to make sure that we're getting the word out there. I know they've got quite a few great resources for different destinations in and around Kansas. But if you want, I would encourage your organizations to sign up for that newsletter and really understand as we learn licensing rules from FIFA on viewing parties and watch parties and how they can get access to those streams to show those events and kind of host your own activation. We want to make sure that folks know that information and it's available to them as they're working to plan different events and celebrations in your community.
Any other questions? I have some too, but I want to exhaust the committee's questions first. Thank you.
Okay. Well, can you talk a little bit about how the funding that's being allocated to KC 26 and other jurisdictions, like what is the process for folks, for others to propose funding needs? What is that process? Do they go to KC 26? Do they go, where does that happen? Where is that portal?
Yes. So we need to work directly with them. We have worked in our agreement with the Kansas Department of Commerce for those funds. We have kind of outlined the budget of where those funds would be distributed, where we believe there's the most Kansas benefit for those dollars. We're doing the same thing with the state of Missouri, the city of Kansas City, Missouri. So all of our funding partners, we're sort of doing that same thing. So working within the parameters of that agreement, I would like to work with the communities to understand what those needs are. We're having a meeting, and a lot of these folks have been at the table in our planning discussions, and there's been opportunity to sort of raise that. Transportation in particular, I know there's some conversations about some additional transit that wouldn't necessarily be part of our required transportation system, but where we could aid in additional regional transit. Our board is also thinking about and contemplating, when we think about what's going to be the long-term lasting impact afterward, what investments we could be making as part of the requirements that could live on and continue to provide benefit. And they're helping us to kind of prioritize what areas we should focus on. I believe Wyandotte County is represented on our board. And so I think hearing from folks both on the board and then the communities directly, and happy to give you my card. They can reach out to me. I've had a couple of those conversations this week already with thinking about, as communities are evaluating those visitors and what may be needed in their community, where those needs are. I will say, you know, we're working all the time to fundraise. This isn't just a publicly funded thing. We've got a lot of private dollars coming into this as well, and balancing both the requirements from FIFA, making sure that we're creating those trade opportunities, economic development opportunities in the region as well. We're really trying to balance all of it, and so would love to work with communities on what they're thinking.
Well, a specific request is, of course, from Strawberry Hill St. John's, which no matter what we do in Kansas City, if there's a soccer event, the people in Strawberry Hill will just have to be very patient and try to find a couple of hours to do something else because they will not be able to get back to their home. That happens today. And if we are going to truly showcase what is going to happen at St. John's Strawberry Hill, they have a request in for some facility upgrades. And like I said, it does not matter what happens. If there's a soccer event, people are going to be on Strawberry Hill at St. John's.
Okay.
Because that happens today, and you're not going to change that. And honestly, that is a lot of local people, but depending on what teams are there and what teams are playing, you will also have a lot of visitors that will find their way there. And we definitely want to make a good impression. Which brings me to the second, to another issue, which is, I have a map. I've become landlocked. I have 5 bridges closed. All of them the east-west connections. So I'm trying to figure out how the eastern portion of Wyandotte County truly benefits, because I know it will be very easy to get people from the airport out west to the area where our soccer stadium is and the training facility, as well as to Arrowhead and to Kansas, over in Kansas City, Missouri, to both Arrowhead, which won't be called Arrowhead at the time, but, and then also to the Fan Fest. But I'm very challenged in being able to articulate locally on how we're truly going to benefit with 5 bridges closed, which go over railroad tracks and rivers. And at the same time, I'm going to have my major north-south connection closed, 18th Street. So the discussion around the World Cup in my portion of the county is much different. And it's much more focused on very basic needs. Like today, we have trouble getting to work, school, medical appointments, et cetera. And now we're going to have an influx of folks that we want to come here and spend money on our part of town. But how are we going to get them there? And then how are we going to navigate and make sure that the residents can get to where they need to go?
Well, I would love to say that I've got a really great solution for the bridges. Are all of those bridges ks.dot bridges? Are they KDOT bridges? Are they local?
They're combinations.
Combination. Okay, so I know both jurisdictions are very involved in the planning. And so what I'd like to do is take that particular challenge to our transportation team, have them raise it in the working group and try and understand, are there plans to have those bridges reopened? And you probably know the answer to that question already. Or how can we help facilitate movement in that area if they are not on course to be reopened before World Cup? But I'd like to kind of put that with the transportation experts to try and figure out what could be done. I appreciate the challenge. I wish that were a different situation.
Another one?
Well, just,
Sure.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yes, so I just want you to understand the concerns and issues of the residents because we're directly impacted. The district that I represent, butts up against the Missouri state line. And so their needs are very basic. Like now we have a lot of homeless. We understand that we have the major transit site at 7th and Minnesota. The problem in my neighborhoods are that there are no public restrooms. So people literally use the parking garages and the alleys. And so when you're talking about this number of people coming, is there money to put porta potties so that people have a place to go to the bathroom? So there are no businesses there that people can go into. And so I guess our issues in thinking through about how we, one, take advantage of this opportunity, but two, how we just deal with the everyday, day-to-day living, that's where our focus is. And we could certainly use some better communication and more help from KC26 to ensure that this part of town does get to benefit.
Great. I will set up a meeting with Unified Government and try and understand some of those dynamics and how we can be a partner in trying to figure this out and at least, especially on the planning side of it, how we can help move people around. I know as we're looking at park and ride locations, making sure there are bathrooms there, we're not like stranding people, leaving people stranded without restrooms and things at those facilities as well. So we're trying to accommodate for all of that with the visitors that will be interacting with the events too. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to write and do this at the same time. Any other questions? I've got several. $10 million was allotted in 2025, and you're looking at 18 million more. Is there a basic breakdown of how that is going to be spent, and can you share that with the committee, and how much has been spent thus far?
Yes, I do not have that off the top of my head. I will, I can follow up with the committee, work with the Department of Commerce on providing the details in the budget that's going to be in there, that's in the agreement.
Okay, thank you. What is the selection process for any entities seeking to be a base camp? Do they have to come to FY20, not FY26,
Yeah.
whatever?
No, that's a great question. So FIFA is the certifying entity that is managing all of the potential base camps. So for anyone that's interested, and like I said, they are continuing to add to the 50 that are currently in their booklet for teams to review and go and tour. But there's specific parameters that FIFA requires, and they are the ones kind of certifying those. So happy to follow up afterward if there's contact information or a website I can kind of direct everybody to start interacting with FIFA on those opportunities.
So it's up to those cities to contact FIFA and say, here's our resume.
Typically the
please.
facility owners. So if sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Madam Chair. But it's
really.
typically those facility owners are the ones that enter into the agreement with FIFA. So for Rock Chalk Park, they have a direct contract with them. Sporting team has a direct contract with FIFA for their facility as well.
So those are in place already? Have
Those
been,
agreements to get into the booklet.
Okay.
And to be one of those in the booklet, that agreement has to take place. That's part of the reason why you don't see very many on the West Coast. They're really struggling to get those facility owners under agreement with FIFA and under contract.
okay, and you said earlier, there are 15 potential base camp locations all across the country right now.
Yep.
And there are 48 teams.
That's right.
Okay, and you said 3 base camp locations in the Kansas City area that have made application and they're in the booklet.
Yep, that's right.
But they are not guaranteed that they're going to get
That's correct.
a team.
That's correct.
When will they know that? When is the cutoff date so that all the teams know, hey, we're going to hang out here
Yes.
during World Cup or
Yep.
wherever?
So the process right now is teams are going out and touring the different facilities and kind of creating their priority list of the base camp locations where they want to have their base camp. I'm not sure how many they prioritize, if it's like their top 3 or how that works. Final draw for the tournament, so think of that as like Selection Sunday. That's when we find out who's in what group stage and who will be playing in Kansas City. Shortly after that final draw, they will submit into a portal with FIFA their top selections for where they would like to base camp. And we anticipate knowing those base camp selections in late 2025 or early 2026, kind of January, February timeframe. I'm not sure how long that process takes with FIFA, but we know that those base camp location and the teams will be known early in 2026. They will be adding, I think they're issuing 2 more booklets with updates. I think the last one is September of this year, last opportunity for new facilities to be in. Part of the reason we think we're really well positioned is because our base camp locations have been under contract with FIFA and in the pamphlet from the very first booklet. So any teams that are really doing a lot of pre-planning, they're already coming to visit those sites and see those facilities. And we've had a number of tours already.
Okay. Representative Rogers, just to bring you up to speed, if you have any questions about World Cup, that's what we're at right now. He has some questions for you.
I waited, no. How are you? Good to see you.
It's great to see you.
All right, basically, and did we talk about the infrastructure situation? Okay, and I'll follow up with that. So, as we see the map here, and I know we've had this discussion as we're building up to this now. So, as far as the investment that Kansas has made, is that, and the Kansas City group, is that about, is there a goal you have to have, or, and of other states kind of our size that are in part of this, are we on the same level? Are we, as far as investment that that a state government and maybe some of those government entities are making?
Yes, so we are actually very well positioned. And when we think about the transportation and the safety security planning that we have underway, the reason that we are sort of leading in those areas, and we are, Kansas City's winning. So even though we're the smallest community of all these host cities, we are further ahead. We will be the first to secure our buses, first to do some of that. And the reason for that is because of the incredibly amazing support that we've had both from the state of Missouri, the state of Kansas, the city of Kansas City. We would not be where we are today without those contributions and those commitments. So first, huge thank you for all the support that you guys have shown. I join our lobbying team here to thank you for that. It's been so important that we have those resources. As far as a comparison, I think Kansas City as a host city is in really good shape. Miami, I know, has received quite a bit of in-kind support from their transit organization, some of their public safety folks. They aren't raising funding. I think they're looking at how they can get in-kind contributions from their communities to provide those safety and security resources. And so we're in a different position because of that support. We are not as our organization asking for additional resources than what we've already been allocated. So we just are so appreciative of the generous support that we have from the state, and are really eager to demonstrate that benefit back.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you. Can you kind of keep me up to, maybe up to date on, I know as we were going through this in the funding process, to have legislators kind of involved as oversight or something like that, kind of how are we as legislators or whoever that is, how are we, who is staying informed and how can we stay informed?
Absolutely. So part of the presentation is kind of direct interaction with us. We also have, how many legislators did we kind of convene for that? 15?
I think like 11 or 13.
11 or 13 legislators that we've kind of pulled together as an advisory committee for us. Representative Curtis was at our first sort of convening a couple weeks ago, and we want to continue to make ourselves available if there's one-off conversations or we just need to stay in touch. You have additional questions after this hearing, happy to provide you my contact information. Obviously, you can always route things through John and the team at Frederico Durst as well. We want to make sure you guys are getting all the information you need and your communities are informed with everything. Also, Senator Sykes sits on our board, and so she is our board is very involved in helping to guide decisions, and the budget, we're gonna be able to provide financial reports as well to the Department of Commerce through the reporting required in our agreement.
The governor's cabinet.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Oh, yes. So the governor has created a sub-cabinet as well of all the state agencies that maybe have resources. Something I didn't think of is the Department of Children and Families has a focus area for human trafficking. When you have these international sporting events, unfortunately, some of those things kind of come along with it. So understanding what resources the state of Kansas, state of Missouri have to help mitigate those impacts. We want to work with all the state agencies as well, make sure that they're involved in the planning and up to speed on everything that's going on. So we just convened, the Department of Commerce and the governor's office convened that first sub-cabinet meeting on Monday. We came over and presented to them, gave an update on planning, and I know that was the first of many conversations to make sure that they understand what we're working on, where the resources are as well.
Okay, refresh my memory. How much did Missouri divvy into this little project?
The state of Missouri currently has $67.5 million committed. The governor also included in his budget that was just introduced last week an additional $40 million. So they will be around over 100 million if the budget stands through their process.
Okay, what about the communities that get the base camps? Is there money in this 28 million to provide them with the funds that they need for police and for any other over and above needs that their community would otherwise not normally have?
Yes, on sort of safety and security, police, that is something that we have factored in. So any required safety and security overlay on the outside of those facilities, we have included those costs in our budget. When you say other community needs beyond, maybe if Lawrence has a base camp at Rock Chalk Park, team fans may want to be as close to those facilities as possible. There's not a requirement that the teams offer any sort of like public practice, those kinds of things. But we are expecting and have kind of factored in an opportunity to create a team house so that fans can interact with their team. We would be working directly with the communities on what that could look like. And we have some event dollars because that would be something that our private donors and sponsors would be really interested in and being able to advertise in those kinds of spaces. So we're currently trying to map out, see what we can afford as far as, additional activations in the community. But again, would want to work with the base camp cities on what plans they're doing. In fact, Douglas County and Lawrence have a very broad swath planning group currently formed. I went and presented to them, I want to say in December, but we are wanting to increase that communication with those planning groups to really make sure that we understand what they're planning. Again, make sure we're not duplicating efforts as far as resources go. If we're counting something in our budget, make sure they know that. And then, if I'm thinking about Strawberry Hill as well, if there's needs at a facility, even if we're not accommodating it for it in our budget, how can we, as the World Cup host committee, be supportive of helping them seek funds in other buckets too? So if there are grant funds available because we know that they're going to be sponsoring additional youth soccer or things like that, how can we be helpful? We want to see these investments live long after the World Cup's over.
So just going back a little bit to the safety and security of, say, these communities. If these communities aren't selected until the end of this year or into January, is that enough time for them to get ready for this? I mean, we're still 10 months off from any community knowing that, yes, they're going to host a team.
Yep.
And then, the build up to June, is that enough time?
So we're planning as though we're going to have 3 base camps. We're planning as though teams are going to select those locations. And if we don't end up having Sporting Kansas City's practice facility utilized as a base camp, and we don't have that expense, there's still going to be there's going to be those projects that are probably not going to be fully funded that we will be able to flex over to. So what our CEO says is that 1 base camp, we're pretty certain we're going to have 1 base camp. 2 would be great. 3 would be extraordinary. Teams don't normally like to share geographic vicinity. They want their own space. They want their fans to have capacity. So to have all 3 base camps utilized would be really extraordinary, but we are still planning as though all 3 of them would be used.
Madam Chair, could I follow up on that a little bit?
Yep.
So I know the proposed base camp in Wyandotte County, the team is actually staying in Johnson. How are you viewing that with a base camp actually being in one county, but the team, are you viewing that as like 2 separate locations?
We're considering that 1 location, but coordinating with Kansas City, Kansas, Unified Government, and Johnson County Overland Park. So we're capturing costs both at the facility and at the hotel for what that safety and security perimeter would need to be, and then planning for and understanding the escort needs between those facilities. So FIFA, they are the ones that kind of have been driving this base camp coordination. So we don't have any authority or control over the base camp training facility or the hotel that is associated with that. However, we are responsible for that safety and security piece. And so we're treating that as 1 base camp because those 2 things are paired. So the investment is for that base camp. Mm-hmm. That's right.
So there could definitely be specialized training and additional security measures regarding these base camp areas. Is that something that you're going to help those communities pay for?
Yes. So we are hosting through the coordinated safety and security planning. We are hosting, and our federal partners have been really aggressive actually at hosting training. So CISA has been putting on training. We'll have tabletop exercises that those impacted communities can participate in. We have those costs factored into our budget. And then, some things that we don't often think about, but and not as used to in the United States are soccer fans. And how they celebrate and how they participate in these matches. We are actually working with our law enforcement partners and obviously our federal agency partners as well to really profile what those fans, what their behaviors are. They like to march to the match. We can't have people marching on I-70. So.
Why not?
Yeah, right. So we are really focused on making sure law enforcement partners understand what to expect out of those fan bases. Obviously, there's lots of geopolitical, things to consider as well. So that final draw is going to be so huge to understand what teams and what fan bases are likely to be in our region so that we can prepare everyone for that.
Representative Curtis.
Lindsay, could you talk a little bit, the price of the tickets for the soccer matches, they are $300 and up? Is that?
They have not announced that.
Okay.
So make sure everybody hears this. FIFA sells the tickets. FIFA has not offered tickets for sale. So any tickets that you see that are out in the market are speculative. There's nothing behind that purchase. So they will release tickets this fall. We will have messaging in the newsletters and everywhere, right, when tickets are available. I think you can sign up now on the FIFA's website if you're interested in getting tickets.
They're going to be expensive. And they're going to be out of reach for
sure.
probably most of the residents definitely that are in my district. So is there any coordination going on with youth soccer or to make sure that we do have some availability for local folks to participate?
So as much as we can control that, obviously we want to make the tournament accessible to everyone. I think a big part of that is the investment we're putting at Fan Festival. So Fan Festival will be sort of the official watch party. It's going to be free. So everybody can come to Fan Fest. We have a 25,000 capacity. We know that that's going to rotate throughout the day. We're going to be, when Fan Festival is open, which again, we're looking at about 24 days right now, that's subject to change. Don't hold me to that. Depending on budgets and if we can afford it, we may, try and lengthen that time. If we can't afford it, we may have to shrink that time. But definitely the match days in Kansas City will be at Fan Festival. We'll be showing those matches and it'll be free so that people can kind of interact. We're definitely looking at different programming that could happen at Fan Fest to offer free opportunities. Obviously, youth soccer is huge in Kansas City. We're the soccer capital of America. For anybody that doesn't know, we're literally trademarks out the soccer capital of America, thanks to Sporting and their efforts there. So we're really, really excited about this. The last time the United States hosted the World Cup was 1994. Soccer wasn't big in the United States at all then. Coming after the World Cup in 1994 is when Major League Soccer actually started. So we saw the impact that having the World Cup here is going to mean for those youth sports and that activity. So we can only imagine what it could be after this World Cup. So we're definitely coordinating with folks. We want everybody to be engaged. There's also going to be an opportunity that'll be really cool. We're anticipating, again, we're still working on these numbers, but about 5,000 volunteers that are going to interact with this whole tournament, everything from the transportation network to the stadium to Fan Festival. So lots of opportunity for folks to be engaged in that way as well. And yeah, we don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Chance of having a Fan Fest on the Kansas side?
We can only have one official FIFA Fan Festival, but we are working on making sure that Dodge City, I don't know if anybody's in youth soccer world, Dodge City has a huge youth soccer program. We want Dodge City to know that World Cup is being hosted in our region. And when I say region, I'm not talking about the metro. I'm talking about really the 6-state region, Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. We want everybody in this region to feel the World Cup. We want them to experience it. And so we're also planning activations and how we can have a presence if people aren't able to come to a match, aren't able to come to Fan Fest, how we can have that impact in activations in other places.
Madam Chair, so is that a possibility through your for the need for volunteers then? So like if perhaps you probably can't afford to go to a match, but you want to really be kind of a part of the whole thing, would that then be an opportunity for folks locally to be part of that volunteer base and then perhaps get some of that exposure? Is that?
No, I
okay.
absolutely think that that's an opportunity. There will be kind of two pools of volunteers. There's going to be host city volunteers and FIFA volunteers. We both have huge numbers we're going to have to be able to make sure that we have translation services. That's going to be a huge need for us. Obviously, signage and stuff like that, we're going to have multiple languages. But I think in that volunteer rank, we're looking for lots of skill sets to help us really make this a unique and Kansas City specific experience for folks coming here.
Okay, you lost me at Dodge City in soccer. You said Dodge City has a huge soccer following, and so are you gonna request that Dodge have a big deal out there for people out west that may not get to the metro area? You're gonna work with them? Are some of these $28 million gonna go help them get
Yeah.
something lined up?
Yes,
Okay.
that is our plan. So especially for events and other activations, there's lots of rules from FIFA on how that can be done. There's a lot of rules from FIFA on who's going to get to actually stream the matches to have watch parties. So we want to work with those organizations, and I know there's lots of planning taking place across the state. We certainly aren't involved in all those conversations. But if there are communities that are planning activations, watch parties, we want to know about those. We want to be able to lend, if that's, marketing for the outside of the building, obviously there, you get to a lot of rules with different partners and advertising, and you better not have a Coke thing next to a Pepsi thing, right? So there's lots of rules around where we can be as an official FIFA host city, but we certainly want to see the investment that Kansas is making a benefit and an impact more than just in the immediate Kansas City metropolitan area, but out in the state as well.
That's good to hear. I want to go back to security one more time. Have you reached out to the National Incident Management Systems to have the Adjutant General's office in on high-profile security?
Yes, so KDEM has already been planning and convening folks. I think for over a year is what they talked about at the sub-cabinet meeting. So we've been a part of that. I think continuing to evolve those plans and bringing in our federal partners as well for intelligence and other information that they may be gathering related to travelers and visa requests and things like that. All of that data is going to help our safety and security planning, but certainly the Adjutant General's office, as well as KDEM. We've all been in communication and are all at the table to make sure that our safety and security planning is robust.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Curtis, and then Representative Roth.
Madam Chair, this is my final question. Lindsay, this is my final question.
Okay.
Are there other events in the pipeline that the Kansas City, Missouri Sports Commission is pursuing that will have a regional impact, that they will be, once again, coming in asking for financial support from Kansas?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Representative Roth.
I don't have a question, Madam Chair, just a comment. And I just want to tell you, this is one of the finest presentations that I've seen, and your answers to everyone's questions just been spot on. And I just want to say thanks. I think the KC 2026 is, you're a fabulous part of it. So thanks for what you did. It was very good.
Thank you.
Representative
Not a
Curtis.
question, but just a comment. I just want you to know I really appreciate you answering all of my a little bit tough questions from my community, but I just felt that it was important that I ask those questions on their behalf, and I appreciate it. And I am very supportive of course, of us participating in a way that we need to take advantage of this opportunity. So thank you for enduring my questions.
Oh, of course, anytime. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone else have a question? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate that, and I think most people know that I was one of the last ones probably come on board in support of this. I appreciate the representative from Wyandotte her passion is probably a little bit different than mine. There's an event going on south of here on Sunday. I don't think that they said, well, we'll discount prices for the community people wants to come. This is a big deal. This is a big deal, and one of the reasons why we made the investment is not so that metro people can go to the games. It's because people from all over the world are coming in. That's the way I understand it. As somebody that lives 5 hours away, 6 hours, 4.5 the way I drive, yeah, is, you know, I support it because I believe in the program that you all put together and that it will bring economic development to a bigger part of the state. Yeah, I've been quoted in the Star a couple years ago. I don't like soccer. I think I was misquoted, but that's beside the point. But your points about places like Dodge City, Garden, almost every local community has a youth soccer program. I would hope that through that process to outreach, and yes, we'd all like to keep every dime in Kansas that we can, but we also understand that, you know, a lot of decisions we make in this building, really what happens in 9 counties affects all of us outside. So I'm okay with that. We have National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas. A lot of people go and we've gone and we stay at the hotel and watch on the big screen. Part of that community, but not physically in the building. So let's keep that thing in mind. As far as you're not part of the sports commission, are you?
We are
Is it a
not.
little,
We are a
yeah,
separate.
that's what I thought,
Yeah,
but.
we are a separate organization. I would say, which is why I can't answer the question Representative Curtis had earlier. I don't have full view into what they're planning. One thing I think that's really important, and I didn't maybe spend enough time on this, but part of what we want to offer, again, is that trade mission in our backyard. And so trying to set up like a KC house, have an ag night, have an aviation night, we're working with Lieutenant Governor Toland on what that programming could look like to make sure that Kansas businesses are benefiting from that, and really not only just the economic development of direct spends and people staying in Salina and driving in for the matches or going to FanFest, but also what opportunities are we creating by showcasing the industries and the businesses that we have in our state to the world. We're working on, trying to provide those opportunities to specific advertisers and sponsors, but we're also looking at how can we really showcase the state in that sort of trade mission view.
Madam Chair, quickly, the other thing, and I will reiterate as well, the other thing that got me excited about this is what happens when they all leave. Infrastructure, critically important in that area, out by Sporting. And, as if other things happen to come out that way, it'd be great to do that. And that's the other thing that as we've talked about before.
Absolutely.
What happens, and so to continue to keep that top of mind, that is all, I know kind of our part as a state is going maybe to safety and security, but somehow if we can build some lasting situations that will help, if they come back in 10 years, 50, whatever, I don't know, but yeah. So those, I think, that's where to continue to gain the momentum at home is to keep that in mind. I know you know that, but just want to make sure it's on the record that as we look at the big picture, taking a step back, what happens when they're gone. Okay?
Sustained and long-term
Thank you.
impact. If we do not have sustained and long-term impact coming out of this, we will not have considered this the success that we know it can be. So it is top of mind. We know we have to do that. I think one of the big things, and I've heard about this for a long time in wearing different hats previously in Kansas state government, understanding some of the transit challenges to get workforce to the jobs. Kansas City region had that challenge. I think as we look to build sort of this transportation overlay, give people good experiences with public transit, I think that is going to be a long-lasting thing that could generate more demand. If you have a better and more robust public transportation system, that's going to aid workforce getting to jobs, and it's going to help that region as well. When you consider additional infrastructure investment, additional capacity needs, if we get people starting to use transportation in a different way, which we could really demonstrate with this tournament, I think you could see benefits that are going to live long after.
Anyone else? I just have a quick question about the cash to card. Are you going to have something like that, like on a brochure for people that want tickets or want information that, you know, if you're coming, that, you know, we're kind of in a card society here, and here's how you can go about getting your money put on a card before you get here? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think we're still trying to unpack that data point from FIFA. It will be very interesting to me if you have somebody with a phone, their ticket is on an app, and they don't have a credit. How did they even get here without a credit card? Like, how did they book the flights? How did they, you know, I think we're still asking a lot of questions about what that looks like. There currently is one machine at the airport that will do a cash to card conversion, sort of like a prepaid credit card, like a Visa gift card kind of thing. Do we need more of those? Do we need to make sure that vendors have like Apple Pay or Google Pay apps on their phones? Make sure we're accommodating for security on that side of that too. So it's a very complicated data point that we're still trying to unpack and really figure out how we're going to address. But we're thinking about it from lots of different angles.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last call. Yes. Please state your name for the record.
John Federico of Federico Durst Consulting. I just thought it was important to clarify a couple of things. One, I agree, what an unbelievable presentation. I've never felt so dumb in my life after hearing how polished that was. To Chairman Raj's question about who are we communicating with, who are we updating, there really was no requirement, but we stood at this podium and said, we want to be fully transparent. So questions, tough or not, we're happy to answer as many as you want. This task force, this advisory committee we put together, we just tried to have diversity on it. But the reason I came up here was to tell you that the chairman of the, Chairman Billinger is on that committee and attended, and Chairman Waymaster is also on that advisory committee. He pretended to hurt his ankle that night, so he couldn't attend it. But we made sure that he was updated with the same information. Any questions you have, please run them through us, run them through Lindsay. We want to make this the best experience ever for the state of Kansas, economically, both in the short term and, to your point, the long term. And so we all need to work together on that. If you take nothing else away from this, what an undertaking this is. And so their time when they come in here is very valuable because we're taking them away from something else, but we're happy to do it as many times as you want. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So with that, I think did you have something? Okay. So just one quick thing. You had mentioned something about giving us an update, kind of a hard copy report on where you are right now. Is that possible? And I mean, whenever you get that.
Yep, we'll follow up in writing so that can be distributed to the committee. No problem.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Anything else? We are not meeting tomorrow. There is no meeting for Ag and Natural Resources budget. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for the update, and we